Hey guys, Vacuum Collector and Fixer here. Today I thought it would be a fun video today to kind of compare two of my premium lightweight machines. So on the left we have a Riccar Supralite, and on the right we have an Oreck XL Insight. Now both these companies had actually a few different high-end uprights that were under different names that were very similar. They just had different warranties. The Riccar had a green version of this that had the same features, but it was called the Sand Trap. And basically, that machine was pretty much the same thing as this, but they discontinued it. They also make the Maytag, which is just the white version of this, but basically the same thing. However, the Maytag does not have the lifetime belt. It does not have the wooden brush roll, and I don't think it has the carrying handle that this has at the back. The Insight back then, probably about 10 years ago, they were making the Forever Gold, which I believe had a warranty that never faded away. I could be wrong though, but I think that's why it was called the Forever Gold. And I believe they had a few other models that were also lifetime models, but this Insight is one of them. Now I should clarify, they still sell this to this day. This one, they discontinued it, and they now have what's called the Oreck Elevate Command, which the only real difference between this and the Command are the headlights have a more slim design like this, and basically the machine just looks a little bit different, but it has the same components, same brush roll, same motor, same pretty much everything. So that's what they have today, and I believe that it is a nice upgrade over this if you are wanting brighter headlights and a slightly nicer color scheme, because the yellow and gray on this is just not my favorite. But anyways, they still sell this. It's just under the Command name. And of course the Conquer is the same thing, but it has a swivel neck, and that goes for, of course, more money. Now, we're going to start comparing these. So, right off the bat, these both have a lot of similarities. They both have the same cleaning width. Yep, they have the same. Probably about 13 inches. They're both very compact uprights. There's not much to these machines. They're very simple. They're very comparable machines. They're very serviceable machines. But there are a lot of differences too. So the headlight is one of them. You can see the Riccar headlight just kind of sits up here, very typical fashion. And the Oreck actually sits more on the floor. And I like this better because the light shines better on the floor. It does a better job at illuminating hard objects or anything that's on the floor that should not be there. But I do think that headlights are a very nice feature to have on a vacuum. I just think this one is nicer. Another nicer feature of this Oreck is the Oreck has LED bulbs that you do not have to worry about burning out, whereas the Riccar has a bulb that has pretty much been out for years at this point, decades. And I think bulbs are not bulbs. I think that LEDs are just a very nice modern feature, and I think it's kind of interesting how a high-end company like this still does not have, at least this particular machine in the Supralite lineup does not have LED bulbs. Now, it's not a huge deal. I just think that it's a feature that a lot of machines like Riccar should add. And again, the Bissell, the Hoovers, those machines, they have LEDs. And of course, the Elevate series also has LEDs. Now, I should also mention that the headlight on this is brighter than this, but the Elevate has very bright headlights, and that will definitely outshine the headlight on this. So you can see they both have bumpers. The Riccar is a little bit taller of a bumper. This is a little bit thinner. But I like how the bumper actually wraps all the way around the Oreck, and the Riccar doesn't. It kind of just wraps around the front and a little bit on this side. There's no protection on the other side, so it's more prone to scratches, I guess you could say. Also, you'll notice that the Oreck has a door on the side to access the belt. Now, this is a lifetime belt model, and I don't think that the Elevate Commands and Conquers, I don't think they have an access belt door because those are lifetime belts. You should not have to replace those. But it's still there. It's a feature that they still added because the XL21, which does not have a lifetime belt, has the door. So, I also like the lifetime belt on this better. It's more durable. I feel that the belt on this, although it is lifetime, I feel that it doesn't torque the brush roll as well as this one does. So that's interesting. Now you'll also notice that the Oreck does have side brushes. I let mine worn down. They actually are supposed to look like this, nice and long, and they were supposed to sweep debris out the corners. They never really did in a way. They just really weren't that effective. It's just kind of an afterthought that Orecks have always had. Now you'll notice that the Riccar does have a little bit more writing on the bumper. It says Riccar right there. Supralite, lifetime belt right there. And then there's a brush roll indicator right there. So if that starts flashing red, you know that the brush is jammed. And these both do have hall sensors. And I will demonstrate that later in the video on how those work. But basically, when something gets caught in the Riccar, it will shut off and it will start flashing red right here. And if you suck up something in the Oreck, it will also shut off, but it will shut the motor off and it will keep the headlight running. And there's no light on here that indicates it. The motor just shuts off. So again, that's kind of interesting. Now you'll also notice on the Oreck that this piece does stick out. And there actually was a little side light right here that was on the XL21. As you can see, the XL21 has it. Now, when Oreck moved on to their Platinums, basically renaming the same machine, they removed this light. So, kind of an afterthought again, not a big deal. And the Riccar does not have a side light. So, another thing I would like to mention are their hoods. The hood on the Riccar is pretty durable, same thing with the Oreck, but I would say that the Oreck is constructed a bit better than the Riccar is. It just feels more durable, it feels more substantial than the Riccar does. So I guess we'll move on to their bags. So you can see their outer bags are very similar. They both have their nice brand lettering right there. This one says Oreck. And of course you have the RR logo, which is kind of hard to see because of the sunlight. And they both have a different design. Now, I'm not too big on this yellow stripe. I'm just not a fan of the yellow. I prefer a different color like the blue on my Platinum Pilot. And this one just has the yellow. Now, that's just me. That's just my opinion. I prefer an all-black color scheme or just something nicer like blue or gray. But that's just me. It also shows XL Insight right there. Now, unlike the Riccar, this Oreck actually has... So this bag is actually here not only to protect the inner bag that's inside of it, but it's also here to further filter the air. And the Riccar doesn't. It's just here to protect the bag. So the filtration on the Oreck is going to be a little bit better than the Riccar because these Oreck outer bags are actually designed to filter particles further. And again, the Riccar doesn't. It's just here for sound deadening and, again, to protect the outer bag. Or the inner bag, I should say. So, as far as the disposable bag that's inside this, the Oreck has a zipper that unzips all the way around. And this is your bag. And the Riccar actually has two zippers. And its bag comes all the way down. Now, on the Platinum Pilot, it also has two zippers. So Oreck also does two zipper designs if you are interested in that. Not that it really matters, but I guess it is nice if one zipper breaks, you have that second one. Now, you can actually see on the Riccar there actually is foam installation. And again, it's not for filtration. In fact, you might be able to see light through it. Yeah, you can see light through it. And this is again here for sound deadening. I believe that's what that's for. Now this is a hard case, as you can see, it is a hard case. Now the bags themselves are the same size, but they take different bags. They're both self-sealing, so what happens is when you pull this tab down and you go to pull out your bag, I did a little bit too fast, so some dust actually puffed out. But when you go to pull out the bag actually self-seals like that. And then when you go to put a new bag in, it opens back up, and then you can close it. And the same thing on the Oreck. This has been a feature that Oreck has had a lot longer than Riccar has. You pull this down. I'm trying to do this without making a mess. And then, of course, you just pull this out, and it self-seals it for you. And then you can pull out your whole bag once you undo this tab. Now, there is some dust leakage right here because I have taken this bag out in the past to check something out. So that's why there's dust leakage. But basically, when you get a new bag, this is already opened, and then you just slide it in and you press it in until you hear it click. Just like that. Now the Oreck also has a hard case, both on the inside and out. You can see the Riccar has a skeleton in the back, a plastic skeleton to keep the shape of the outer bag, and same thing with the Oreck, it has a plastic skeleton around the whole bag. Well, not the whole bag, but the top portion, so that is nice. I do like that feature about both these machines. I like that because it does not make the bag look weird when it gets full. It makes the outer bag the same. So we're gonna zip this up and we'll move on to the back. Now the sticker on the Oreck is on the back right here. Now the sticker on the Riccar is at the bottom, so we'll show those off later. So a big difference already, and I like this about the Riccar, you have a foot pedal right here to recline the machine that's accessible by your foot. And I do like that. The Oreck has a friction lock, which, as you can see, mine worn down, but you put your foot here and you recline it. It's not a huge deal because the machine does still stand up on its own, but I do prefer the foot pedal of the Riccar. Now, as far as blockages go, obviously these are direct air machines, so the dirt flows up this back spine and into the bag. Same thing on the Oreck. But one thing about the Oreck, I do like how they have instructions right here on the side that shows how to unclog this, and this is nice for the customer to see what's going on with their vacuum. It's very unlikely that this clogs. It's more likely that it will clog down here somewhere. But that is still nice. I also like how it is easier to unscrew this without having to worry about Phillips head screws, as you can see. And it actually does come apart up here, or down here and up here, whereas the Riccar just comes apart down here. So you may have a harder time unclogging this. The clog happens up here. They both have carrying handles. Now, I prefer the carrying handle on the Oreck, not only because it's higher up than the Riccar, but of the design. When I pick it up, it's more well balanced, especially if I have to pick it up upstairs. Whereas this just feels, you can see when I pick it up, it just doesn't feel as, the handle itself does not feel as comfortable. It just doesn't feel as good as the Oreck does whenever you pick it up. Now, one nice feature about these is their cords are actually mounted up instead of down. I've complained about this before, but on the cheaper versions, the cords on the Riccar is actually mounted down here. And all of the Orecks have them mounted up here. And I'm happy that Riccar on this premium version actually fixed it and put it up here. The reason why I complained about that is because not only can you not swivel those metal cord hooks, but you actually would have to bend down and unwind it by hand. And of course, since this is a premium model, it has the swivelable cord hook. Now the Oreck also has a swivelable cord hook. It's just right here, and you can undo your cord. Now one difference is the Riccar does have a longer cord, but there is a trade-off. This Riccar has a 40-foot power cord, and this Oreck has a 30-foot power cord. But there is a trade-off because of weight. They were able to put a longer cord on this one, but they had to cheap out and make a thinner cord to keep down on weight. This cord is very thin, and as a result, a lot of people like to run over their cords, especially on these machines. And because they're just not made well, they get nicked up, and I had to tape this when I got it secondhand. Whereas the Oreck is a lot thicker of a material, and it's actually even thicker on the XL21. You can see how thick that cable is. And I've said this before, I think Orecks have one of the best cords in the industry, and it definitely is much better quality than the Riccar. And I still think that 30 feet is perfectly passable for a vacuum, even if you have to make it a little bit shorter to get better quality. So of course you can see the handle down here, the carrying handle actually doubles as the lower bottom cord hook. And I also see a lot of people wind their cord on the carrying handle. In fact, that's how I received it. The cord was wrapped around down here. I guess a lot of people just don't notice this cord hook. Now, I'm not a fan that the cord hook is mounted down here. I would prefer it to be mounted up there like the Oreck, because again, it just prevents me from having to bend over. That's just me though. Now, their handles are similar, but the Oreck is a taller machine. So if you are a taller person, you'd probably like the Oreck better. Now, the handles themselves are very comfortable. They're both rubber. And the Riccar does have an indentation right there for your finger to rest there. And it has a 2-speed power switch, so the middle is off, up is low, and then down is high. And the switch on the Oreck, so up is off, the middle is low, and the bottom is high. I prefer the switch on the Oreck though, because I like how the switch is positioned better. I feel that the speed control is just positioned a lot better than the Riccar. Also, the switch itself feels better quality on the Oreck. Now you'll see that the Oreck also has a C-shaped handle, and I really like this handle. It's very comfortable. They both have very nice handles, but I like the handle on the Oreck just a little bit better. Now, the Oreck is a little bit different as far as assembly goes. So on the Riccar, and this has always been the same, you have 2 screws back here, and you would pop your handle on, put this back panel on, and then screw in your screws. Whereas the Oreck has a twist lock, and this is actually a premium feature because on the Classic, which is a much cheaper machine, it has 2 screws. So out of the box, it's going to be easier to assemble because you don't have to worry about any tools. And the handle is incredibly sturdy. It's not going anywhere. It's secured very well. Now, one thing I should mention, because this machine is a huge upgrade over the XL21. A lot of people would prefer the Riccar over the Oreck because the Riccar cleans better than the Oreck. But that's not necessarily true. The Riccar cleans better than the Classics, but it does not clean better than the XL21. It's more evenly matched with the XL21 style machines. So if I grab a Classic, for an example, so one of the reasons why the Riccar produces more airflow than the Oreck, I should say this Oreck, is because the tube back here is much wider than this Oreck. So there's going to be a lot more airflow going through this tube. However, on the XL21, they double the tube in diameter. I don't know how well it shows up on camera, but this tube is at least double the size compared to the Classic. You can really see a difference. And again, this is going to allow for a lot more airflow to pass through. I also like that this is metal, so it's better quality. Now, one thing, I should actually keep this out because there's more improvements that Oreck has made. One thing I also like about the Oreck better is Riccar never had this, but Oreck actually has a spot for extra bags and belts and whatever accessories you want to keep on your vacuum. And I really like that. I really like how you can keep your bags in here without having to worry about losing them. And that just makes it easier for the customer to keep everything more organized. whereas the Riccar does not have that. So anyways, both these machines, and I find this kind of funny, both these machines have a direct air system, but they don't filter the air. So what happens is there's a cooling fan inside the motor, so the air gets sucked in. Of course, the motor produces carbon dust and it blows out. Now, this is not a big deal, but I think it is a really big deal because you're spending several $100s on a vacuum. These do not have post-motor filtration. There's no post-motor filtration. You can actually see directly in the motor. Same thing on the Riccar, you can see directly in the motor. Now, I find this funny because Oreck actually used to add a filter in here, because on the XL21, it has that. As you can see, there's a filter back there. But they did away with it, unfortunately, and the Riccar never had one to begin with, so yeah. Now, I like how the Oreck has rear wheels. That's one thing I complained about the Classic, because as you can see, it doesn't have rear wheels, and that meant that you cannot wheel it on its back. Whereas the Oreck, this newer one, you can wheel it. Same thing with the Riccar. So anyway, let's move on to the bottom of these machines so we can compare. So I also have the Classic here just to show the improvements that Oreck has made with this more expensive design. So as you can see on these two machines, you can notice a difference on the brush rolls. The Riccar has a metal brush roll with replaceable brush strips. The Oreck has a wooden brush roll with non-replaceable brush strips. Now this can be nice, but unfortunately, I find it's kind of funny. Riccar doesn't even sell their own brush strips, which I find very weird, especially since they still sell this machine. What's also kind of funny is because this metal brush roll is so expensive to make, and because this wooden brush roll is so cheap to make, it's really not an advantage because you can replace the whole brush roll just about as cheaply as you can this brush roll. This brush roll is about $20 in the depending on where you look, $25 for this brush roll, and the brush strips for this Riccar are about $20. So again, you're not really gaining much of an advantage. And one con about these metal brush rolls, I'm not just picking on this machine, it's a lot of other machines with metal brush rolls. These metal brush rolls tend to get out of balance, which is weird. I don't know why they do this. And unfortunately, to replace this whole brush roll, it's $80, which is kind of crazy because you can replace this whole brush roll for $20 and this whole thing for $80. So, and again, I look at it as when you replace the whole brush roll, you don't have to worry about the brush roll at all. It's a new brush roll, new bearings, new end caps, new everything. When you replace these brush strips, again, it's just nicer to replace the whole thing, in my opinion. This is just my opinion here, but again, there's really not much of an advantage being that the brush strips are just as expensive as replacing the whole brush roll on the Oreck. So, the Oreck has stiff bristles, as you can see. They are stiff. Same thing with the Riccar. The Riccar always had stiff bristles. The Oreck brushes are just as stiff as the Riccar. Now, on the Classic, you see the Classic has very, very soft, dense bristles. Very soft. So on the XL21, I keep calling this the XL21 because this design is based off of the XL21. They just added more features. On this XL21, it has, again, stiff bristles, just like the Riccar, so that's a huge improvement. Also, the air duct in here is nice and wide, just like the Riccar, so it's going to produce more airflow, just as much as the Riccar does. Now, another thing is the fan impeller has been updated. The original fan that was in here, that these came with, were a lot smaller, and they were a lot more screamy, and they just didn't perform as well. Whereas these fans, they were more refined. They were larger in diameter, and they just produced more airflow. And because of that different shape of fan, this machine ran a lot quieter than this machine. And this machine runs so quiet, it runs quieter than this machine. And it runs miles quieter over the R10E, which is basically the bottom of the line Riccar. I think that that machine should not be sold because of how loud it is. It's ear-piercing loud, and I hate using it. And that is why I use my R10P instead of that lower end model. Now, on the Riccar, you have these two little screws that you give a quarter turn, and you can take off this whole bottom plate, and you can access your brush rule and belt for cleaning. The Oreck has 5 screws, and you can remove this whole bottom plate and have access to everything right here. Now, to access the belt, not that you're really going to have to do it often, because again, it's a lifetime belt, you have 1 screw. Now, I was talking about how I did not like how the Riccar on my Riccar versus Elevate video did not have rubber wheels. Well, this premium one does. You actually have 6 wheels. 2 small ones in the front, these 2, and these 2 larger ones. And the Oreck, again, it has rubber wheels. Oreck has always had rubber wheels. Now, the Oreck also has belt storage, and the Riccar doesn't. And I think that's pretty much it as far as down here. But as far as their Hall sensors go, their Hall sensors work differently. The Oreck brush roll actually relies on the magnet, and there's actually a little circuit board in here that detects this magnet. And if this magnet is not, if it does not detect this magnet spinning, then it's going to shut the whole vacuum off. Whereas the Riccar, it has a little pulley in here that's connected to the belt, and that belt spins that pulley. And if something gets caught in here, that pulley is going to stop turning and it's going to shut the vacuum off. So again, their sensors are a little bit different. Now, I think that the Oreck is more reliable. I've seen a lot more customers complain on the Riccar that the circuit boards in these go out often, and that's a common problem with these machines. These machines have always had circuit board issues. And it's like, I'm sure it's happened before, but the circuit board issues in these Orecks are hardly ever. I've never seen an Oreck have circuit board issues. And I've always seen it with Riccars. I've actually seen it happen after a year of owning one, which I think is kind of crazy considering how much money these things go for. So, we'll show off the stickers. This is the Riccar sticker. You can see it's model R10P. The P stands for premium. Made in the USA with globally sourced components. And this was made on November 2017, based off of that serial number. And it's a 5.5 amp machine. And the Oreck, see, this one was made the 78th day of 2014. And this is 3.5 amps. It's model U7010ECS. And it also says made in the USA with globally sourced components. So, again, they're very, very similar machines. Now, I will go ahead and run these just so you guys can hear the difference in sound and how they clean. So I'll be right back. Okay, so I have both of these plugged in. We'll start with the Riccar. Now, these both have 2 speed switches, as I mentioned earlier, and low speed is actually for bare floors, and then high is for carpets. Now, I will say, the Oreck being a more refined product than the Riccar, I do feel that this is just more gentler, I guess that even is a word, on your bare floors. It does not feel nearly as harsh as the Riccar does, and that's probably due to the motor size, this one being a 5.5 amp, this one being a 3.5 amp. So if you have delicate floors, I wouldn't even recommend using neither of these since they have brush rolls that don't shut off. I recommend getting a canister instead. So we'll start off on low. And high. Okay, and now for the Oreck. Start off on low speed, and here is high. Okay, so they obviously both groomed and agitated the carpet very, very well. Now, I decided to put down a little bit of shredded paper just to see how they would do. Starting with the Riccar. All right, excellent. That did really well. This is the Oreck. So, small piece. That's stuck to the carpet. Probably a piece of tape or something. Anyways, these machines both did really well. About the same as far as the pickup paper test. Now, obviously, that really does not have anything to do with its deep cleaning performance. These both deep clean carpets very well, and I know that because I have used higher amperage machines like these bypass machines before. And I've put down cat litter on this carpet, and I've went over this multiple times with these machines. And I pulled both of these out, and you can clearly hear these both picking up stuff that these 12 amp machines left behind. So these machines both deep clean carpets just fine. They both groom carpets just fine. And I think that if you were an elderly or someone that just really wants a lightweight vacuum that cleans just fine, I think you'd be very happy with either one of these. However, there is something I would love to point out. So I was doing some research, and I always knew that the Riccar was light years more expensive than the Oreck, and for that reason was why me personally I would have chosen the Oreck over the Riccar, because not only is it just made better, the brush roll incident just really didn't make sense to me, how the brush strips were just as cheap to replace as the whole entire brush roll. But the Riccar currently goes for, on their website, a whopping $962. Now, I'm not sure if they're going to do free shipping. I would hope they are, but I would not be surprised that with tax that would go up to $1,000. Now, $1,000 for this vacuum is probably one of the most overpriced things I've ever saw on the internet. This machine is not worth $1,000. I would not spend more than $500 on this brand new, let alone $1,000. Now the Oreck, this machine, this is the one that you can find today that replaced this. And again, it's the same thing as this, except it has nicer headlights and, in my opinion, a much nicer color scheme. This machine, as you can see, is only $379. Now, its full price is $450, which isn't even half the price of this. And it's on sale for $380. Now, another thing about Riccar, I've never seen them have sales. I check on their website pretty frequently, and they never have sales. You can get this machine everywhere else for $800. Now, again, that is way too much for this machine. I think that this price is more reasonable. And again, you're getting the same thing, just the Oreck brand, and in my opinion, it's a better machine. So, and Riccar not only does not include discounts, they always higher their price. These machines, I believe, went for $600 when they were new. I could be wrong, they could have been cheaper, but I know that when these first came out, these were under 600, at least under $700. And they've really went up in price. Now the R17, which the only difference between this and the R17 has a different rug plate that's designed for thicker carpet, and it has a 17-year, not 17-year, I think it has 17 free service by your local vacuum store. Currently goes for, on their website, $1,300. Could buy you one of those. And it's just black instead of red. Now, the only way I would get this machine or recommend this machine to someone is getting this secondhand, because I got this machine for under $200, and all it had was a damaged cord that I had since repaired for now, but I'm going to replace it eventually. I got this machine for under $200 in its current condition. And this I got for $15. And this was at a Goodwill. So getting these new, there's a big difference. So again, I do not recommend getting this new. You can get this so much cheaper if you just look online, go on Facebook Marketplace. You can even get lucky on eBay, although eBay does overprice their stuff. I just got lucky and got this for under $200. And you can sometimes find that command that I just showed earlier for under $300 on eBay, new in the box. So I'm just going to go over this really quick. With the Oreck, you get LED headlights that you don't have to worry about burning out. I prefer the brush roll, how you replace the brush roll instead of the brush strips, because when you replace the brush roll, you start completely fresh. New bearings, new roller, new brushes, obviously, new everything. The Oreck is made better, cord-wise, plastic-wise. So I just do not see any reason to buy this brand new over this. Anyways, I gotta go. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed.